Hi guys, it's Marshall here, and today we're going to talk about love addiction. This has been a common theme showing up lately, and a pretty big one. I'm going to adjust the light here and see if it looks any better. There we go. So, in codependency, love addiction and codependency are almost one and the same. I tend to look at codependency as a lesser intense version of love addiction, because not all of my clients have had a strong addiction or attachment to a particular person, but a lot of them have dealt with symptoms that with codependency, and since love addiction and codependency tend to have the same symptom map, they are almost the same. I really look at it as intensity. So I've got some notes here on my screen that I want to follow, so that this can be a really clear and concise discussion about love addiction, what it is, why it's happening, and what to do about it. Okay? So first of all, love addiction is a symptom. It's a symptom of chronic love neglect and love starvation. I call this the love wound. This is where we have not been given the love we needed and still need as a human being. And this love is about an affirmation of our value and appreciation for our presence and an enjoyment of our beingness. It's about being loved for who we are, for our existence, for the way we be, basically. It is not about what we do. Now, if we've dealt with narcissistic abuse, we've dealt with chronic childhood emotional neglect, we have experienced this. We've experienced this kind of love deprivation that traps us in being convinced that we're really not worth it. We're not worth knowing, we're not worth keeping, we're not worth loving. But in reality, this kind of treatment comes from people who themselves are highly wounded, and that they're projecting that wound onto us. They have not done their work, they have not worked out their shit. Instead, they put it on us and blame us and make us the parent in the relationship, and then suddenly we don't get our needs met. We're just a child. Okay? So that's where it comes from. And there's a lot of detail we can go into on that. You can check out the rest of my YouTube channel or do other searches for it, but it's really an important concept to understand that it breaks down to being neglected in love. You're starving for love. You're starving for that validation that says you're okay, you're worth it. You're starving for that sense of being included, being valued, being wanted. Now, if these are things that really resonate with you, then stick with me here in the video, because we're going to go through some of the symptoms that come up with a love wound, right? Symptoms. You dismiss your own pain because you feel that their toxic behavior and terrible treatment is justified. Either you deserved it, or they're just having a bad day. They're just struggling. They were abused too. They've been a victim of abuse, and this is why they do it. And so I'm going to be noble. I'm going to rescue them by not accessing my own feelings about how they treat me. I'm going to dismiss them, and I'm going to focus again on their pain, not on mine. This leads you to ignoring massive red flags that show up early on. Some of these red flags are just the simple fact that they tell you they're an asshole. They tell you that they do these things. Another common red flag is they don't take ownership of their behavior, or they use their own illnesses to justify their behavior. These are very serious red flags, guys. And what is a red flag? Think about that. What do you think a red flag is? I'm going to ask you this question in a different way. Do you think a red flag means you slow down and try to make things work and try to work it out? Is that what you do at red lights? Do you just slow down? No, you stop. Red flags in relationships mean the relationship is over. It's done. There's no going forward. You can't. Don't even try to fix it. Just move on with your life. Yellow flags are where maybe this can be worked out. Yellow flags never, ever, ever include abuse. They do not include neglect. They do not include anything that falls into the category of love of a toxic love relationship, which is physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, gaslighting, that kind of stuff. Those are all red flags. Yellow flags are like, we had a bad day and maybe he's poor at communicating and he can improve that. And that's skills-based improvement. But red flags are all about abuse. Do not ignore them. Okay. So another thing we do with love addiction is we tend to justify or explain away their actions. They're sick, they're hurting, they're struggling. We also maximize the positive. But the positive isn't that rare or isn't that common in love addiction. The other individual that we're addicted to treats us like garbage. But, sometimes they love bomb us. Sometimes they give us affection, or they apologize, or they do a nice thing, and our brain thinks, oh, this is it. This is when he's changed. This, we're okay. It's going to be okay. They're getting better. And this is like the 7,000th time this has happened, and they haven't gotten better. But because we are so hooked emotionally and mentally to a fantasy that they are actually what we need and what we've been looking for, and that they just need a little more time to heal, just a little more love, that we could fix them, that we ignore the utter abundance of the emotional abuse and the toxic behavior they give us. So this is very important, because this is where we're in denial about reality with this relationship. And we have got to get honest. We got to get sober with ourselves, because healthy relationships do not cause us pain. They do not harm us. They do not attack our character. They don't leave us feeling confused and belittled. They do not gaslight us. They do not diminish and attack us. They love and they honor and they respect us. I'm very, very strong in this, because I'm trying to get through if you have love addiction, you're going to be feeling resistance to this. You're going to be feeling like, you might even feel a buzzing or a confusion with it. You might feel a resistance or a pushing away, or even an anger towards it, or even a shame towards it. Those are all signals that I'm hitting the truth in you. And you need to take this very seriously, because your body, your true self, your real self is saying, hey, wake up. This is what we need to understand. This is what we need to do. Okay? Now, other things that show up with love addiction, we're fueled by the fantasy of being loved by someone, anyone, unconditionally, and that's what drives it. We grow up with these childhood and teenage fantasies of just being totally and unconditionally loved. And when we've been love-starved, when we've been love-neglected, this is a potent fantasy. It fills our brain with oxytocin, with serotonin, with dopamine, and we get hooked on these chemical experiences. And so when we meet somebody that love bombs us, gives us all this attention and affection and gifts, or if we're guys, sex and validation of our masculinity, we suddenly experience this enormous high, and we think this is it. This is real. This is true for us. It's not. It's not. It's our brain reacting to what it's always needed. But it's being so overwhelmed by it that we can't think straight. We actually will blank out abuse until it's pointed out to us bluntly, and then we'll blank it out again, because we move into what's called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a state of our brain, our psychology, having two opposing truths. And then we're just like, well, I don't know what the truth is, so I can't deal with it, so I'll shut down. And typically we'll go to the truth that's most comfortable for us. Okay? Let me sit here and mute this so we don't get another bling. Okay, so we need to think about this. Be real sober with yourself, because this is powerful stuff. This can change your life if you start accessing it and accepting it. So you got a fantasy you're living with. That fantasy is that you're going to be loved unconditionally by someone. You don't even care sometimes who it's with. Sometimes we do. Sometimes it's about specific people or a person or a group. But sometimes it's anybody. It just depends on where we are. I've been in both. I was a love addict. I know what that's like. I would pine after one particular person, but then I'd also want this huge group of people to like me too. I used to have fantasies in junior high that I'd have a multi-million-dollar company and that I'd give this presentation in front of the junior high, and then people would applaud and like me. That the girl of my fantasies, the girl I had a massive crush on, would come up and kiss me. This is delusional. But this is the kind of fantasy I had. And I had in high school, I had this fantasy of coming across a car accident where the girl I had a crush on was in it and I could rescue her. Come on, guys. This is delusional. It's so delusional. This isn't. Before I healed my codependency, I had a fantasy as an adult of meeting this beautiful, perfect woman who would just love and adore me and praise me. Talk about a bit of narcissism there, right? It was just mind-blowing. It's so out there. But yeah, this is what we're doing to ourselves. We have these really weird fantasies that we have to get really honest with and knock them out. Okay? So, and then we consistently break our boundaries. We say no and then we go against it. We drop the person, we break up with them, we pick them right back up. We go no contact, we break the no contact. We stop respecting ourselves, if we even ever did respect ourselves. I mean, I didn't. It's only been the last 10 years I started to stand up for me. So I get it. I totally get it. But we consistently violate ourselves in hopes that they'll love us, in hopes that this is the time that the person will really give a shit about us, care about us. So that's a big deal, and that's a problem. It's a huge problem. All right, so, and then that utter high, it convinces us that this is true. So we got to be really careful here to realize that our feelings are not truth. They're not indicating any kind of truth. They're indicating a biological response to something, especially when it's programmed and intense like this. Now, there are intuitive sensations and information we can get through our body, but right now your brain is running on a huge amount of programming, and it's not reliable. So don't necessarily rely on your feelings to help you understand what truth is. Rely on what's actually happening to understand what the truth is. Behavior matters. Words are bullshit. Okay? Alright. Now, another symptom that tends to show up in this is you will be constantly and consistently blamed for the problems in a relationship. You're going to be told that you're weak, that you need therapy, that you're selfish, that you're flawed, that your mistakes are the only focus. It's always about, you're always the problem. They never are. You could be accused of being a liar, being deceitful, cheating, things like that. These are symptoms that you're in a very toxic relationship and that you're responding to it with love addiction by staying. I mean, you'll have an internalized sense of loneliness that's so profound that you would rather suffer with someone than be alone. This pathological loneliness is not your fault. In fact, the love addiction is not your fault. The love neglect, the love starvation, the love wound, not your fault. None of this is your fault. You didn't create this. You were born into it. Okay? That you are not the cause of any of this, but you are the perpetuator of it. And now you can stop that. You can start to take positive, powerful ownership in your life. And that's where we start. When I work with clients one-on-one, or they get into Thrive, or they start Heal and move into Thrive, I start with positive, powerful ownership. And this is a very hard concept because there's two angles to it. One, you get to give up what's not yours, right? You get to put out what isn't yours and just say, back to you. But then you've got to access what's yours and take it back. And you're just going to have to sit there. You have to take ownership of your choices. You have to start doing what I call swallowing glass, which is like, I'm stayed in this relationship. I keep coming back to it. This is me doing this. I have to own this. I have to start dealing with whatever feelings show up by doing that. Often it's shame. And we're going to get real comfortable with shame as we work together. And I say that because that's what this is about. Right now, you're getting some mentorship from me. So, and I have other videos and things on shame, but your liberation comes from accessing your loneliness and beginning to reconnect with the real self that's there. Starting to reconnect with you rather than connect with others in order to avoid you. Now, there's a way to heal this, and that's part of it. It's just reconnection. But we also have to start working with that shame, right? So you can see my brain is kind of following a script with the way it's behaving. So we got this loneliness. We've got this addiction to somebody else's approval. We've got this chronic violation of our own boundaries. We have this fantasy we have to live with. How are we going to deal with this? Well, there's three things that basically everybody has to go through in this. First, we have to break the cycle of denial. This means we've got to start accessing the real pain. We've got to start maximizing that pain, making it larger than the illusion of the love. We have to start really letting ourselves feel the impact of this person's behavior on us. Because that's going to break the denial. It's going to get us into more of an acceptance that they're unhealthy and that they're toxic and that we can let them go. And an acceptance that they're really hurting us. They're really harming us. And we don't deserve that. It starts to paint a real picture of what's happening. And that we can see that that's not love. Even though they love bomb us and we feel a different way momentarily, we're not being loved. We have moments of feeling loved, which are not love, but we're not being loved. We're not being respected. We're not being honored. I mean, let me be really clear here. You're worth knowing. You're worth loving. And you're worth keeping. It's here. Who you are matters. What you feel matters. You haven't been raised in a way to believe that. You were not given those kinds of boundaries. You were not respected and treated that way. But that doesn't make it any less true. It's still a fact that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. Okay? So we got to break that cycle by maximizing the reality, which means maximizing our contact with our pain. We got to go through a detox that way. Then we've got to break the fantasy. We got to break the fantasy of being rescued. We got to break the fantasy of rescuing. We got to break the fantasy of being unconditionally loved by someone. And we've got to realize that real relationships have boundaries. That love only flourishes in boundaries. That while love might be unconditional, relationships and connection are not. And that we got to start putting ourselves first, always. Because when we can put ourselves first, we can effectively connect with others second. And it has to start with us. Our needs and our feelings, they matter and they come first. And we got to begin acknowledging their toxic behaviors and lies for what they really are. This isn't a safe person, guys. This isn't somebody that deserves your love, your empathy. Nobody has an entitlement to that. That's a gift. And it's time you start respecting your gift. You got to begin grieving. You got to grieve the fantasy, what you thought you had. That's going to break this cycle deeply. Because once we break that fantasy, we stop seeking it. And we sober up. And then we've got to refocus on you. Okay? Refocusing on you begins to acknowledge our unmet needs and begin learning how to fill those needs in healthy ways. It's about beginning to bring comfort to our pain and compassion, but also self-discipline. Like, I feel pain, but I'm not going to go out and medicate it by going back to the person I was addicted to. We've got to build and then maintain consistent boundaries. We have to start standing up for ourselves. We've got to engage in structured therapies that are designed to help alleviate and then neutralize and then eliminate the love addiction. That's what I specialize in. This is what I do, is I help people eliminate love addiction by healing the love wound. We heal codependency by healing the love wound. What is the love wound? It's that chronic love, neglect, and starvation that led us to believe that we're not worth loving, we're not worth being loved, and nobody wants our love. We heal those three components, everything else shifts for us. I do that through the program called Heal. And then we couple that with skills development through Thrive, and you emerge as a person that can engage in healthy relationships and thrive in your life. That's how I do it. There's other people who do it differently, but that's how I do it. I'm doing it specifically with codependency for 7 years, very successful at 89% success rate. 9% of that 11% that don't succeed, the only reason I didn't succeed is I didn't do the damn work. So do the work. The 2% that didn't, the other 2% that did not succeed, we were not a good fit. So that was a compatibility issue. So, and we got to start accessing and honoring our loneliness, and then genuinely connecting back with the real self, drawing the real self forward into the world, and then reconnecting with healthy people, not attachment. Attachment comes off as, you make me feel better about myself. I depend on you for my own sense of worth. Connection is, I can share what I feel, you'll reflect it back in a positive and caring and loving way. Okay? And then we got to build real friendships and connections and a life of our own that isn't focused on somebody else, but it is focused on our own satisfaction and our own engagement in the world. So we got to get into our own sense of purpose and identity and meaning. We can do that in a number of different ways. You get to discover what those things are through Heal, through Thrive. This is how you break love addiction. This is how you reclaim and witness your own wholeness. You don't need somebody else to make you whole. What you need is real love, real kindness, real support, both from yourself to yourself and from others to yourself. Okay? And then you need to be able to share that with others. So that is my stint on love addiction. Got questions? Reach out to me. The links are below. You want coaching or mentorship in this? Check out Heal, enroll in Heal. If you want private one-on-one mentorship, contact me. I have limited availability. So you're going to have to, we'll have to see what availability is. But generally, I'm going to point you towards Heal, because Heal is your first step. And then you get live mentoring hours with me twice a week. That's 4 hours of mentoring twice a week. Group setting, of course, but that's where you start. Okay? Now, let me know your thoughts. When have you felt this way about someone? When have you witnessed any of these symptoms of being love addicted? Share with me in your comments. I want to know. I want to know you. I want to understand what was going on for you in your life at that time. I want to know if you're still in it. And let's see if we can get you through it, because I know we can. Okay. Thank you guys for being a part of my community. Please like, share, comment on this video. Share with people you know that will they'll benefit from this. Because if you're a love addict, you likely know a lot of love addicts. Okay. Thank you guys again. We'll talk next week. Bye-bye.